Hello everyone and welcome to my little corner of the internet. My name's Michael and I'm bitten by a radioactive book. Well, today I'm actually bitten by a radioactive comic book, and that is very close to the actual origin of bitten by a radioactive book, which is of course bitten by a radioactive spider, and that is how Spider-Man came to be. And fittingly, we're talking about Marvel and how to get started with reading Marvel. So let me start with a little bit of background so you see where I'm coming from and why I'm doing this, because actually I'm like an on and off Marvel reader since I was very little. So in like elementary school I had my first Fantastic Four and my first Hulk comic, and since then I really enjoyed Marvel, but of course not all the time I've been reading it. So there are mostly like a period of 1 or 2 years where I read comics, and then there's another period where I don't read comics, and so yeah, I have like a lot of holes in that career, but I'm following these characters now for nearly 30 years. And so something happened within, let's say, the last 5 years mainly, that is pretty amazing because of the popularity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of new readers get exposed to those characters, and I have a lot of people here on BookTube that start out with Marvel and say, yeah, I really like the movies and the characters, and now I want to get started reading the comic books, but I feel a bit intimidated because there's so much of it, and that is partially true. So I thought it might be a good idea for somebody like me who has like a bit more insight. I'm not like a comic guru where I can say, oh yeah, that was the issue from 1963 drawn by this guy, and I prefer his art style to the one. I'm not that guy. I'm just a guy who, as I said, on and off reads the comics. So yeah, I thought I could give a little bit of insight of what I'm doing to get a roundup, to catch up to some storylines and stuff like that. So let's start off by talking a bit about the Marvel Universe and what is actually out there. Marvel has about 80 plus series each month that they publish that all belong to the like core Marvel Universe. Most of those series belong to a certain family of series. And they are like headed up at Marvel in like one department, and so the editorial stuff is done by the same people, and so there are often like crossovers between those series, or the series belong together. Maybe two or three of them are even written like by the same author. And there we have like the Avengers family that has like all the Avengers team titles. If you're wondering, for example, it's not as easy as go into a store and say, oh, I want to read the Avengers, and then you get only one Avengers book. Unfortunately, or fortunately, if you know how to get through and how to prioritize, there are a lot of series about the Avengers. You can read the like normal adjectiveless Avengers series, then there's New Avengers, then there's Captain America and the Mighty Avengers, there is Avengers Undercover, although I think that finished up. There are the Secret Avengers, so there's a lot of different Avengers series, and of course like main characters of the Avengers like Captain America, Thor, the Hulk, Iron Man, Miss Marvel have their own separate solo title, and all of these belong to like the Avengers family. And there are also like the X-Men titles, there the setup is like the same. Then we have the more urban focused heroes like Daredevil, Punisher, Moon Knight, for example. Then we have like the cosmic series. I think For example, the Fantastic Four belong to that. Of course, the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Silver Surfer, and we have like the Spider-Verse with Spider-Man and various other titles. So there are these like big families. And as I already said, there are sometimes events between those families, or even bigger events. And that is something you see quite frequently. And these events are often planned ahead over years. So the seeds of the stories are planted in various different series, and you can then at the end only read like the big event series and get a little bit of background. But the more series that participate in that kind of event you read, the more knowledge and insight into that event you actually get. It's always possible only to read that event on its own and understand it, but as I said, the more you read, the more insight you get into the event. So this is something I think you have to know, because when you go out with that mindset, I only want to read like the Avengers, for example, at the moment, it's one of the bigger titles of the, or more important titles of the whole Avengers series, then you will miss out on certain information. For example, the New Avengers are also like a core title of the Avengers family, and at least you should read like these two titles, for example, at the moment to get the gist of what's going on. Probably Avengers World as well. So you already see it kind of gets messy at some points. One thing that is also worth mentioning is that Marvel created an artificial like entry point for their stories for newer readers around the year 2000, where they launched like a second continuity of their stories. What does that mean? All the normal titles you have, and I just talked about with these different families and stuff like that, all belong to one continuity. They are like one universe, which is called the Marvel Universe 616. And all the like stories play in that universe and with that continuity. Why are they numbered? Because other universes, there are often like parallel universe stories, and every kind of parallel universe that is created has like its own kind of number, so the continuity does not get confused. For example, if you are somebody who comes in only from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is another continuity as the continuity in the comics. So there will be events that happened in the comics that are part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe is drastically different to that what you find in the comics at the moment. And I talked about this artificial entry point. This was actually a new universe Marvel created, the Ultimate Universe, that allowed younger readers to experience the stories for all those characters, but from a clean slate. So everybody like started out with their origin stories, and we had like a few series that were never that many as in the normal continuity, but Spider-Man ran for a very long time, the X-Men did, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers there started out being called like the Ultimates, and they had like a few changes, of course, from the normal universe. But if you say I just want to maybe get a feel for the characters, and I want to enter a universe that is not as overloaded and as old as the normal Marvel continuity, the Ultimate Universe could be an opportunity. That is kind of messy as well, because at the moment actually a huge event happens to celebrate Marvel's 75th birthday, and the Ultimate Universe is like going to melt with the normal Marvel Universe continuity. So after the event ends sometime later this year, we will have like a completely new Marvel Universe that will most likely consist of totally new characters, a lot of the old characters from the normal Marvel Universe, and some of the characters of the Ultimate Universe. So one approach you could take to get started with Marvel would be to start with the Ultimate Universe and read your way through the Ultimate Universe. That is one of the possibilities. A second possibility would be really to start at the beginning. If you are somebody who says, I don't care about maybe various different graphic styles, I don't care about maybe the money it costs to get this endeavor done, then you can start with reading like reprints of the 1960-ish issues of all the classic series and try to read on your way onward. Most of the series have like classic bind-up versions where there are 6 or even 10 books bound in one volume, and so you can read through a lot of the series. It's kind of hard to navigate because some start at the very beginning and then move on, and some are just doing like important events, so it will need a lot of detective work to get through that. But one solid way to start the classic route would be through the Marvel Essential titles. So Marvel did something maybe a bit in the same line of the SF Masterworks books. So they did like reprints of the very classical beginnings, and for most of their important characters you can get like 4 to 6 to 8 volumes of that Marvel Essentials, where you always have about like 10 issues starting really with the number 1 in the 60s, and you can go up from there. Those essential bind-ups can be acquired, I think, through Amazon or through various other shops, and maybe in your local comic shop as well. At least they can maybe like order them for you if you don't if they don't have them there, because some of the essentials are actually also like 10 years old already, because they came out at this time. The third entry point I want to talk about is the year 2004. 2004 is a very great way to enter Marvel Comics, because some of the important series, at least surrounding the Avengers and the X-Men, started anew or relaunched. And it is recommended to start with the Avengers Disassembled kind of story arc, which are, I think, the last issues of the Volume 1 Avengers series. I will link this in the description box. I don't have the numbers in my head at the moment. It's about issues 500 something. And this is a very good storyline, because the story ends there, and then a new Marvel series written by Brian Michael Bendis starts off with the title New Avengers. And it starts in 2004, and then you can follow this New Avengers series, and later on, after the first, I think, two events, there's the event called House of M, for example, that happens, and the event Civil War, and after that, next to the New Avengers, a new series called Mighty Avengers starts, and from there on it like branches out. So the Avengers have like a very good entry point for 2004. and the X-Men have as well, because in 2004 there was a relaunch of the X-Men series. Again, it's adjectiveless because most of the Marvel series have like adjectives, but the one just called like Avengers or X-Men we always refer to as the adjectiveless series. And the X-Men started anew in 2004, as well as a second series which is a bit separate from the normal things that happening around the X-Men, called Astonishing X-Men, and that was written by Joss Whedon in the beginning. That was of course before he started working on the Avengers movies. And the only running series there was like Uncanny X-Men, and there you could like to try to pick up in the issues around 2004 as well. So that would be probably a good start to get started with the X-Men at this entry point. So 2004 is like a very good year, and if you work your way from that through various series, you get all the like interesting events of the last decade and are pretty much up to speed to what happens now. And of course the last possible entry point would be Marvel Now, which was like, I think, a marketing like rebranding that happened roughly 2.5 years ago. And by starting there you could get like the very latest developments of all the franchises. So this is a possible entry point if you only want to catch up maybe what happened in the last 2 years, and you can do that. What all like the entry points have in common, of course, if you don't start at the real beginning, there will always be like little holes where something happens and somebody who knows everything would say like, oh yeah, that is a reference to that storyline from the 1970s or stuff like that. But to enjoy the actual comic, you don't have to know that. And Marvel does a pretty good job. If something very interesting has happened before, they will always have like a little caption box within the comic that says something, oh, this character refers to the issue Spectacular Spider-Man 243 from 19 something. If you then really wanted to explore what that reference or so was all about, then you could look that up. The last thing I'd like to talk about would be reading Marvel physically and reading Marvel digitally. Because with all those series that are out there, and with all these like physical books, sometimes they are even older or out of print, it can get very expensive very quickly to read a lot of books. So maybe you should start out only with saying, okay, I try to limit myself maybe to 1 or 2 or 3 series that I'm really interested at or characters I'm interested in, and start with that and start with the essentials or start at the entry points I mentioned. Because as I said, the physical copies are a little bit on the expensive side. The alternative to that, if you are comfortable to read comics on your tablet or in your browser or on your phone, would be a subscription to Marvel Unlimited. Marvel Unlimited is a very interesting service, and it's the one I personally use to get caught up with like everything. And it is a service where you can pay like a monthly fee. I think it's about $9.99 or $9.90 each month, or I think about $69 each year. And then you get access on the Marvel website to their backlog of all the comics that are digitalized and scanned in. And at the moment, I think they say it's over 17,000 individual comic books. And I use it constantly, and at least I'm pretty sure I can say for the last 15-20 years everything is there, and for most of the important series and franchises, everything from the 60s up to now is there. There are some minor series where they don't have like all the issues scanned in, or where certain arcs or one-shots miss, but the important stuff is there. But you get access to like almost everything Marvel did. And as Disney now owns Marvel, to Star Wars as well. They just added a few weeks ago like all the Star Wars comics that ever were published. So if you're a Star Wars fan, you can use that one as well. And with Marvel Unlimited, you, as I said, you just get like access, so you don't own any digital books, you just get access to the library, and yeah, you can read it then on your tablet. They have apps for Android and for Apple products, and you can also read it like in every browser. And the experience, I personally like the experience because you can do like a panel by panel view that is normally guided very well, because it does something like show you every individual panel, and if the whole like concept of the site is something more or astonishing, they also show you like a big picture of like the whole page layout in this guided view thing. You can also read it like page by page if you want. So yeah, there are various options to read that digitally, and that would be my recommendation if you say, okay, I'm committed to pay like $70 and have access to like everything. Then that is the best way or the cheapest way to actually get caught up. The whole thing works a bit like that. You get access to like all the current stuff, but like 6 months delayed. So the things that are new on Marvel Unlimited at the moment are the things that came out of at the end of last year. So the digital publishing is like 6 months behind, of course, because they want to sell the physical books as well. But if you're okay with that, if you say, I don't have to read like the most current thing that's going on, and I'm totally fine, and one of my main aspects is that I want to dig really deep into the past of certain series or characters, then Marvel Unlimited is, yeah, the most uncomplicated and cheapest way of doing that. So unfortunately that video got awfully long, but I hope that you saw with all the content involved that it was a bit necessary to go into so much detail. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have like any questions or if you have some additional recommendations because you're a Marvel fan as well, please leave them in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of me, subscribe to my channel. And until next time, I hope you will get bitten by a really good comic book too. Bye.